Hey guys, I'm David with Transparency Fitness, and today we're Dr. Nick Trubee. I want to make sure I throw that doctor in there ahead of the rest of the name. And there's like a list of things to talk about today.
I'm pumped,
but
yeah.
I'm going to kind of let you introduce yourself. You're a fellow podcaster as well. So he's probably going to be over here just been like, this amateur over here. I've been doing this for years. But yeah, I mean, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and we'll just dive in. Like a lot to talk about.
I love it. Yeah, no, I first appreciate you having me on. It's always
Thanks
good
for coming.
to team up with another podcaster. But yeah, so just a real brief history on me. It's been almost, I'm thinking 2015. So 7 years ago, I got my Ph.D. in exercise physiology. Did a lot of my research in cardiovascular physiology with firefighters, police officers, military, stuff like that. So a lot of cool stuff diving into that realm, because obviously you do have to have some level of fitness to do those positions, right?
They prefer you to
You'd
have
hope.
it. Yes.
But there's still a lot of stuff that, it's hard to describe when you think about the number one, killer in a lot of those positions are, heart disease and heart failure, heart attack. Hard to define, but fitness is always an issue.
What
as
are
part
some
of
of like
that.
the top factors that cause that, right? So is it bad health? Is it not enough fitness? Is it just lack of just moving?
Right.
I feel like some people just get to a point in their life where they just stop moving.
Yeah, and it's tough. There's so many wild things, especially with firefighters. You're always exposed to hazardous materials.
So that actually plays.
It's part of it.
Okay.
Circadian rhythm is always a huge thing. I don't know if you've dove much into that reading.
I have not.
Which is kind of like the alignment of all of the cells in your body and how they like to function. Sleep is a big one.
Okay.
When you eat is a big one. When you exercise is a big one, and when you're getting daylight. And if you're a firefighter and you're working 24 on, 48 off, you
do it when it fits.
Yeah, so it's like
you force that puzzle piece in.
Yeah,
because if that's your 45 minutes and that at 1 o'clock a.m., but you're committed.
Yeah, So that's, in my opinion, that's probably the biggest thing that is trending most of the cardiovascular issues.
How do you figure all that stuff out, though? I mean, does it just take trial and error and seeing how your body reacts?
It does. Everybody's a little bit different, but we're all humans, and we all have the 24-hour day cycle, and our bodies like to view sunlight when we wake up. They like to view it again before we go to bed, but in certain doses of certain types of wavelengths and stuff like that. So it's a kind of the circadian code. If you're interested at all, and anybody listening, if they want to learn more about circadian rhythms, great book to go out and read.
It's called The Circadian Code.
The Circadian Code, written by one of the best.
See, I want to be like Joe Rogan. I want to be like, hey, Keenan, order that off Amazon.
Get it.
Let's go on, order it.
Hey,
Let's go.
$16, get it.
I got monies. Let's
Yeah.
You name it, we're ordering it. We'll talk about it in a future podcast.
Yeah, dude, it's probably one of my favorite books.
Okay.
So I would definitely, if you're interested in like zero cost ways of, hey, can I just feel better in general with basically spending no money?
I'm always open to different thought patterns or different way to look at it, or someone coming up with some kind of, I just never thought. Okay, let's try it.
Yeah.
So I'm always open to that. Sleep is important. It's really important. I can go on very little sleep for a long time and feel like I can function pretty well in that, maybe due to some of my military experience.
True.
And that's more of just, I think, my brain overriding my body saying, sorry, we got to do this right now, so let's just stay focused. We'll get some sleep. But yes, 6 to 8 hours, I feel like I'm pretty well energized if I can get that at night, but sometimes toss and turn.
Yeah.
So I learned that I think I sleep a little bit better if I go to bed around 9:30, 10 o'clock, if I can get there, versus like a midnight, 1 o'clock.
For sure.
I think it's because maybe I tend to be in bed earlier, but go to bed later. So like I may get in bed at 11, but pass out at noon or midnight or 1. If I get in bed at 9:30 or 10, I'm just
gone. Yeah.
Like, because that means I'm tired and I'm just like ready to go.
You've got like your third win and you're up till midnight or whatever. But yeah, with like the firefighters, it's like that's a big one. And then, you're just sometimes, if the culture of the area doesn't emphasize, nutrition and exercise, it's easy to get, into a rhythm where you're just not moving.
Yeah.
Because some firehouses are super busy to where you're just on your feet 24/7. Other ones, you get like 2 or 3 calls. They're not doing much. It's just, but over 50% of deaths in firefighters is heart attack. Right.
Really?
That's the number one killer in firefighters is heart attack.
Now,
it's not getting like burned in a building or something collapsing on them.
Do you think stress plays a huge part in that?
I would think so.
Because I feel like there are parts of their job, or at least if it's even a shortened, like they're fighting a fire. there has to be stress there when you're, especially if it's life threatening, but you're still got to do your job, right?
Yeah, you do. So and most of them will they'll tell you it's like it's not really that stressful for them anymore.
So do you believe that it isn't though? Like that doesn't like subconsciously affect them and stress them, and that could play a part, or that they really have learned like over time they've done it so many times that they really have learned how to deal with it.
Right. Yeah, and it could be like, those types of things, even though consciously they're not thinking it's very stressful, but you're still really increasing your sympathetic drive to where heart rate and cardiac output and everything's high. Yeah.
Even though they don't feel it, is their body saying, well, according to, I guess, like you said, heart rate and things like that, your body does look like it's stressed right now, even though mentally. So again, does that go back to kind of what I was saying with the military? Your mind can override your body because it needs to.
Oh, totally. 100%. I would agree with that. But I don't know much on like the psychological end of that.
Right.
That's kind of out of my sphere. But still,
I
think
it's just it's an interesting thought.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
So kind of what do you bring to those, those dissectors, those departments and stuff that kind of can help them in making better decisions and maybe even just realizing about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I haven't really been in that area for a while, but when I was really active in that, I was trying to create some kind of a screening tool that could give you objective measures of like, this is where your risk level is, beyond that of just like, what's your blood pressure, what's your cholesterol level, how old are you, just the traditional stuff that like doesn't really give you much information. So I was developing a tool that assessed the stiffness of your arteries, and I would measure basically the stiffness of your aorta, so that right when your blood is ejected from your left ventricle and comes out to your body, that main artery, I was measuring the stiffness of that in live people, which is pretty cool. And they were firefighters. And you get an actual objective number measure.
How do you do that?
There's a little tool, and it kind of used it was called tonometry, and it was like a little pin that basically assessed when the blood is ejected from your ventricle, your left ventricle, and goes into the aorta. Your aorta expands,
right,
and then sends a wave down the aorta. Like if me and you're holding a jump rope, and you hold it tight, and I shake it, and that wave comes to you, and it can come back, right? Same thing happens in your aorta. It goes through.
It's more of a sports stadium, but
right, exactly.
The wave, the ultimate wave.
Yes, very similar. If you just send the wave back, and it would go down to where it bifurcates at your leg and bounces back up. And the faster that wave travels, the stiffer your arteries are, right? If me and you pull that jump rope super tight,
you want it to take a longer time.
You want it to take a certain amount of time. Longer is better. It means it's more compliant, it's stretchable, it's healthier, right? And the research I was looking at was basically saying like, if you exercise and you have an X number of fitness, right? It was like a number of your aerobic fitness, that you were essentially had the arteries of a decade younger person.
Really?
Which is pretty sweet.
So I'm guessing you would find people that smoked, like just in general.
There were. I excluded them from my study because that's like an indicator for like, oh.
Well, I'm just guessing that they would take even longer. Like their arteries would be even more beat up if they had been smoking for a long time.
They would, and it'd be very much stiffer.
Right?
It'd be much stiffer. Smoking is one of the biggest indicators for stiff arteries. For sure.
I would think so.
Yeah, right. So that was a cool study, and I was trying to develop that to where we could like screen people to say, hey, like, outside of everything else, because people that did have great, quote unquote, great profiles were still having issues. So there's obviously some more details we were missing, right?
Right.
So that was kind of my biggest contribution. Not sure if it took off much after I kind of exited that field, but nonetheless, it was really cool.
Wow, that's pretty neat. Yeah. I would have never thought of something like that.
Right.
But I mean, that's one of the really cool things that I think about you that I really like is that you're just always kind of looking at research, new thought patterns, theories on anything. It seems like from machines to exercise. I mean, if it's new to the fitness world and it comes across your desk, you're ready. You kind of dive into it, and that's kind of a lot of what your podcast is on, right? It's
exactly.
Finding specific topics. Like you actually when you came in earlier, you said that you just put out a podcast yesterday.
Yep.
And which today is, what is today? So the people can go
26th?
back and find it because this is coming out later on. But it's like the 26th of April. But yeah. So but yeah. So and what was the topic on yesterday's?
Yeah. So my podcast is Fitness Lit Breakdown, and lit not as in like this is lit. Fitness
is lit, guys.
Yeah.
And let me break it down to you.
Right. Yeah. It's more of like literature. So I find new research published within the latest to a couple years back on anything in the fitness world that is usable information, right? So most people aren't going to go out and be like, oh, I can't wait for this manuscript to come out in blah, blah, blah journal. It's like, nobody reads those, right? And then when you do, it's like, what in the world is this person even trying to tell me in the first place? There's so many, words.
Right. Well, right.
Yeah.
It's just if they don't have a certain level of academia,
It's
like
tough to read.
myself, if you broke it down to me in common terms that I learned becoming a personal trainer, right,
Yeah.
or things that I use on a daily basis, which I think you could use a lot of those words, then I might understand it. But yeah, there are certain
Exactly.
things I'd be like,
Yeah, so it's like, some of my recent shows have been on training to failure. There's so much information on either side of that argument. So it's like, but it gives you an idea of like, well, if I'm going to, what level of intensity should I be
Right.
lifting at? Like what percentage of 1RM should I be doing? How many repetitions should I shoot for at that resistance? What does that give me compared to like leaving a couple of reps in the tank? Is there a difference there? Like stuff that's like hard to dissect.
and then you've got everybody's going to react a little bit differently to the same exact program,
Right. Exactly.
So it can't be a 100% blanket. Like this is what you'll get if you do this, or
Yeah.
this is how this,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of information to go through and analyze that.
Yeah. So it's fun. I do it for where's the research going? What are those data telling me? But how can I actually implement that? Because I think you and I are very similar in that we kind of treat every day as like an experiment. It's like let's see what happens for these 2 months, right?
Right.
And then
I'm
let's kind of
always
go back
looking,
and
I'll try something. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think if you have that approach, and I kind of pair that with what I'm trying to find in the research, it's like let's just see what we can do over a 6 or 8 week time span in terms of our training. Did it work? Did it not work? Where can we pivot from there?
So do you change up your program pretty often then? Or at least if you find something, a theory or something that you're like, oh, this is interesting. I want to try this.
Yeah, I'm pretty basic. I kind of stick to the the basic movements. I'm not super fancy in my training.
Okay.
But I will.
What is fancy? What is fancy training?
Fancy training. 90% of the stuff you see in the media would be fancy for me.
Fair enough.
I mean,
if I had my way, dumbbells, bar, free weights.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's all I need. However, I will say after doing machines 8 weeks, pretty much only machines, with a coach, I think for most people that aren't trying to grow or don't have a very specific goal, I think machines are probably one of the better options, especially for overall for trade-off for the amount of energy and injury issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's. I remember you saying you did that. It's cool
Yeah.
that are you on the end of that training program now? Or are you still working
We
through
finished it. So we found that after 8 weeks, I didn't progress in the bench as far as like a bar bench. Like I could lift the same amount then that I could before, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But we did find that like my max squat was around 365 at the time, and I was actually able to hit 330, which was a squat PR after 8 weeks. So without touching a squat bar for over 8 weeks, actually probably longer than that. And the last time I did the squat, I think I had like 365 max. So I jumped like, I don't know, 45, 75 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And, granted, I have knee issues, and I think that this was the first program where my knees were like, oh, like, with my knee issues, the machines really allowed them stabilized so that I didn't have any issues. Because there are times that like I've done exercises like a squat or something, and I've just gone down wrong, and
Right.
it happens, and then I've upset my knee, and now I can't squat for the next 2 months. There was a time period where I did upper body for 6 months and didn't do lower body almost at all because I was like swollen and I was
in pain.
Yeah, well, I have a torn meniscus in my left knee. I think another one in my right knee, and there's so much arthritis in it, they won't do surgery on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They told me I'm gonna need knee replacements by the time I'm 40 something. I'm like, that ain't happening.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna overcome that. That was actually kind of the beginning of one of the things that helped me get into fitness was like I'm gonna figure out a way to fix my knees, and I found a bunch of different things, kind of like you. I just did a bunch of research, and I started trying things, and I think I've kind of accumulated a bunch of things that I think that at least help my knee. And the bad thing is that you learn things, and then I've gotten bad and not stuck to it as well as I should have.
Yeah.
Like my own program, because I'm caught up in other programs or life in general. So.
100%. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, I've had in my current model now that I'm working at, I've had physicians reach out to me as like, is it worth working with you, or should I just go ahead and do it surgeon is telling me to do an operate on my shoulder. I'm like, well, tell me what's going on. And like, I would think 3 months of working with me is probably worth trying before you go and get your shoulder cut into. You know what I mean? So it's like,
well, yeah, why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
I mean,
but people don't think that way for some reason. It's like, why not try some effort for 3 months?
Yeah. Like, I have a little, another little sports cards business with a buddy of mine. And he's got some injuries that are so bad he really can't physically exercise. So he spent the last year just eating healthier. He lost like over 100 pounds just eating healthier. And he's like, man, I've even thought about getting that surgery to help get rid of it. And I'm like, man, you've lost 100-something pounds in the last year. Don't even think about it.
Right.
I know it's hard, but even after you go get the surgery, guess what? You have to continue living your life the same way you are right now.
Yeah.
So all this is going to do is save you money, not have someone cut into you, and it might take you 2 more extra years.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think he said 120-something pounds in the last year.
That's nuts.
Which, and he literally just eats chicken salad, and he's gotten used to it. And because that was one of the things I said when I brought him onto this business is I was like, hey, you got to be healthier if you're going to be around me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't be around me because I'm serious. I'm going to buy healthy food. I'm going to put it in the fridge for you, And I didn't realize that that's what he has been doing already. And then I felt really guilty because I was like, oh, my bad, man.
Yeah.
Like, because half the time, back in the day, he would try and he'd give up and try. And I thought he was going through one of those phases. No, he's on a solid phase right now.
Yeah, right. It's all about, like, that's just part of being consistent. But at the same time, anytime you're aiming for a change, whether it's like for a weight loss or a weight gain, the slower you can do that, the better.
Yeah. So what do you find I find like you said, slow progression. Like, if I want to help someone with their diet, I slowly take stuff away from them.
Mm-hmm.
Like 8 Cokes, let's do 4 Cokes this week. And then 6 months later, you'll cut a lot out if they're committed and they stick with it.
Right. Yeah. That's a tough one too. It's like, aspartame and sugar is so addictive.
Right. So, so you spent a good chunk of your career doing strength training
Mm-hmm.
with athletes.
Yeah.
What's that been like? I mean, what are some things that you've learned? Because I know you're sitting there coming up with things, having them do some stuff, and then let's see how they react.
Yeah, right.
Like, what is coach having me do? Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah, right. It's like, that's the tough one because most of the time when you're working with like a higher performing athlete, you have to rein them in most of the time. You know what I mean?
Do they want to overwork?
Oh, they'll overwork themselves to the nth degree, and they'll think that's cool because they can and they enjoy that. But I'm like,
that's me.
You know what I mean? It's like, and that's great.
And every CrossFitter out there.
Which is cool. And,
good mindset.
Yeah, right. It's like you have to have that level of just stupid drive to compete in some of the stuff you're going to do. But at the same time, it's like we can mimic that in some training, but it can't be all training. You know what I mean? Like, a nervous system is a nervous system. Some people's can handle way more stress than others. But in the end of the day, nobody is, God.
But isn't that the difference between, smart training and not smart training?
I would think so.
To a certain extent. Like even NBA players are starting to do yoga and do recovery stuff that they've never done before because they're realizing, oh, I take care of my body.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's starting to come out more. And, some of the higher achieving athletes, when the stuff comes out, it's like, oh, this person spends $1 million on their training and recovery and nutrition and stuff. I'm like, well,
that's not a lot of money if you're making $50 million a year,
right? Exactly.
$75 million a year.
And if you want to do that for 20 years and instead of like 4 years,
you pay more than that.
Yeah. So it's like, I think that's really smart. But that's probably the biggest thing when I'm starting to work with these athletes, that it's like, well, I've always done this or more. I'm like, well, yeah, but you want to get better, right? Like, how much more can you do? What if we got a little bit more strategic with when we're going to use more? But then do the stuff that you would just kind of push off and say it's not worth it. Do those on some days when you've got some extra time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a blend of doing like what you mentioned. It's like, nobody wants to do like the PT, quote unquote PT stuff that allows you to do all the other stuff.
Oh, I even have my moments, but I will tell you right now, if you do what PT tells you to do and you do it outside of PT like you're supposed to, you do it inside of PT like you're supposed to, you will get better.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10. There's that one person that didn't get better and they've told everybody it doesn't work.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's like, I'm a huge proponent of prehab and post-hab of your, around your workout time. And the older that I get, the more I realize I have to do that. Or it's like, I feel like I'm 75 years old if I don't.
Do you work with PTs? Like the kind of the triangle PT, client, you, and the 3 of you talk?
Yeah, a lot of times I will. I'll be in close contact with some PT people, especially ones coming off like a certain injury that progressed to a certain extent and then it's like
right, because they got to
what I
get
mean?
back to full explosiveness again.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to over push them too early.
Right, because PT gets you back to like normal operating capacity. No athlete wants to be normal operating
Right.
capacity.
Unless you're on a team.
Yeah.
Unless you're getting paid, yes. PT, yeah, they get you back to just moving, and then you
Right.
got to, if you want to get back to that competitive part, you get someone like you.
Exactly, right? So that's like, maybe like a third of my clientele that I love to work with, because it like always challenges you to think of like, what next level of programming and coaching do I need to get to have this person be able to be ready on race day? But at the same time, like, what is the minimal amount of work they can do to get ready for race?
Right.
If that makes sense.
Do you like programming?
I love it.
I think it's probably one of my favorite parts of like it's sitting down, like having a real conversation with somebody, having them go through a couple exercises, and then sitting down and just figuring out what you're going to have them do for the next 8 to 12 weeks based on what they can do. And then it's seeing that progression if you did your program right.
Yeah.
and they did their half right.
Well, usually it's like if they're coming to you that they've never worked with you before, they're probably going to improve somewhere because you're going to do something different than they've done before. So it's just like the novelty of the training component of that, and just the way in which you're applying your technique to them, you're going to see some improvement. But, it's just a big puzzle piece. And if you like starting out with an exploded puzzle and seeing the finished part, then you like programming.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I like making up programs. Well, actually, that's pretty much what we do for our Sunday Fun Day. I make up a program. I have a template that I built now that I work off of, but I still change up the exercises and stuff quite a bit.
Yeah, and the template's probably really basic, right? It's usually nothing crazy.
Yeah, it's 13 exercises. It's I think 3 cardio, 2 legs, 1 arm, 1 back, 1 shoulder, 2 core, 2 body weight, 1 dynamic movement. And I think there's 2 more exercises. It's like 13 exercises, and then between that, there's usually, let's say, 8 to 15 minutes of cardio, depending on how fast you're going. If you push, you could actually probably finish all the cardio in under 8 minutes, but you're going to be dead.
Yeah.
And then roughly, then you've got the full body, all the full bodies, probably 500-600 reps on top of that. So because my big thing is, I do 2 body weights because the functionality of body weight is extremely important in day-to-day movements.
Right.
And we do a dynamic movement, and then something like a box jump or something like that, just to keep our bodies doing that. And then we do
some power generation.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone needs legs, so we usually do lunges and squats, and we do walking lunges weighted. People hate that.
Yeah.
But it is so good for you because it's a functional movement that also builds strength. So you're building strength while moving,
right?
Which is going to give you overall better balance in life. And then the 3 cardio aspects, because that's the one thing that most of us are weak at, especially us that like to lift.
Yeah,
is keeping up our cardiovascular. But even if you do cardio once or twice a week really hard, it'll keep you in pretty decent shape.
Oh, for sure. Intensity is king when you start talking cardio. Upper tier cardiovascular fitness, intensity is always king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, and I'm always trying to train my ATP system to work a little bit better.
Yeah.
So
right.
I love people doing the assault bike as hard as they can for like the first time, like really going hard. And I'm like, wait till your ADP, and they're like, what does that mean? So I said, you just spent all of your energy. Your body's about, because you feel fine the second you finish usually, and you get off the bike and then it just hits you, and like the second your body realizes it's in a negative deficit, it's like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah, outside of just taking a huge scoop of creatine and hopefully it gets into the muscles, right?
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
But it's not that fast. Yeah, you just gotta rest.
How awesome would that be? Yeah. Take a needle. Come on, creatine to the body. Let's get this. That would be pretty insane.
Yeah.
So let's. What else? There's so much other stuff. So you worked at the University of Kentucky.
Yep.
Did you do research for them?
Yeah. So I did my Ph.D. there.
Right.
So through that, you have like your own research protocol you create, and you take that through to fruition and stuff. And then, so I did that for just under 4 years. They hired me on to teach for them. So I stayed for a year and did that, and kind of continued helping out with some research areas along the lines of the firefighter stuff I had mentioned before. And then I had intention of staying there for a while, but my wife found a different position. She's a physician, and got an offer in Ohio. So
how great is it having a physician as a wife? Because I know you're bumping ideas off of her.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
but
hey, babe, what do you think about this?
But like, you'd be surprised. Like, physicians don't know jack squat about nutrition exercise, any of that stuff. They don't get any of that stuff in
Well, they
school.
may not have the full knowledge base that we've learned just from personal experience,
Mhm.
and you actually have much more academia than I do. But they know enough. I have a physician as a client, and
Mhm.
like she knows how to eat healthy. She knows,
Yeah.
like,
Because
I've
she's
taught
taken
her-
it upon herself
Right.
to learn that stuff.
some of that, you
Yeah.
know. But I mean, you know, basic what I think most doctors should know basically, and then most of us know kind of like what's healthy and what's not in
Mhm.
most cases.
Yeah.
Just what's accessible and what's not, and what's cost the expense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, I get.
But you are right. There are things that she didn't know that kind of surprised me, and I was kind of like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, they don't get much training in that world, but, at the same time, they're science-minded, and they can, if they're interested in learning more things about exercise and diet and things like that, they're way ahead of the curve, right? Because they have more understanding of physiology in general.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, my wife gets on me all the time because it's like she sees the big picture of stuff because she's working with patients all day and has to have the end goal in mind. I'm diving into like, well, what's going on? Why is that, receptor not working at the cellular level? Because it's just Ph.D. is like, you get bogged down by the details sometimes, which I like. It's just
Right.
part of
How
the deal.
long did it take you to do your?
It took me just under 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, which is pretty. 4 years is kind of like the
Right.
yeah.
Are you gonna go back and get your doctorate?
My MD?
Oh, your MD?
No. one doctorate is plenty for a lifetime.
Why not?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, no thanks. But yeah, no, it's true. Yeah.
Okay. Well, awesome. So you worked with, I think one of the cool things that I want to know more about is the different machines that you got to work with far as body compensation, right? Like body fat.
Yep.
There were 3 major ones that you kind of got to work with. And I kind of like a breakdown a little bit on each one and kind of how you thought they worked.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not even going to try to pronounce them all.
Yeah. Yeah, composition's a interesting field. And what most of us get tripped up, even like younger students in the actual field of exercise science, have a hard time understanding in the beginning. Like, we've all heard of BMI, right? Body mass index.
Right.
That has nothing to do with the actual composition of your body. That's just a ratio of your height and your weight.
Right.
Right.
It was like supposed to be some kind of mass average.
It works great for the average population of like,
right.
You should be probably some number of weight for how tall you are, right?
Right. So, and that's what it's really based off.
That's all it
is.
is.
An average. So it's not very specific in a person like me to you, because technically my BMI, I think, is like really high due to the amount of muscle I have versus like my body weight.
Exactly right. So if you look at like a real athletic population, like maybe like a higher performing sprinter or like a defensive end in football, those people might be seen as like obese in the eyes of BMI, right? But they're like 5% body fat.
Right.
So that doesn't really work. But average adults,
That's what obese is. We are all
yeah,
in trouble.
exactly. So that kind of like is the realm of what BMI is supposed to be used for. Just a mass, like send it out in the population. What's the number? That gives us some information, right? But that's not composition. Composition is actually breaking down what is fat mass,
right?
What is fat-free mass? And fat-free mass can be muscle mass. It can be water. It can be mineral, bone, right? It can be anything else other than fat.
Okay.
But those things are, can get overlooked. It's like, well, bone mass, yeah, that's fat-free mass, right? But it's not muscle mass.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it gets really hairy when you start diving into all the different ways to measure. And I'll mention this many other times, in that any tool you're using when you go to like a wellness center or a fitness center and they're like, oh, let's get your percent body fat, there are a lot of what's called assumptions that go into that measurement tool you're using.
100%.
Right? And that some of the tools that are mass produced, like your bioelectrical impedance, where you're holding the thing out in your hands and squeezing it, there's like 5 or 6 assumptions that if those aren't exactly followed out, then the reading you're getting is just pure poop emoji.
Well,
you know what I mean?
If you go to like I'm guessing like a local supplement shop that has like an InBody where you stand on it, you hold the little thing, and you go every Saturday to do it. But some Saturdays you drink water before, and some Saturdays you don't drink water before, and some Saturdays you wear heavier clothes, and other Saturdays you don't. You don't wear the same. I mean, really, if you want the most accurate baseline, you have to almost repeat those same exact steps.
You do.
And then on top of that, this is what I tell my clients, because I have like one of those little scales over here that does the body fat percentage and everything.
Yep.
I'm like, I don't know how accurate this is. What I do know, and what I do believe, that if it says you're 250 pounds at 30% body fat, and 3 months from now it says you're 225 pounds at 27% body fat, I know that you lost, we know that we lost body fat, and we probably did lose close to 3% because it gives us a baseline to work with, even though we might have really been 35% and we're really 33 instead of 27 and 30.
Yeah.
We have a baseline to actually see the progression.
Right, yeah.
And for most people, that's the most important thing.
It is, yeah. So that is nice because you can get some level of, test, retest, repeatability, right? We don't know how reliable or accurate that is, though.
But the stuff, right. And so, but that's, what you're working with here at the University of Kentucky is.
Yeah, so it's different. So like, I'll kind of give you a background on the different ones that are, I would say, that are good. Because there's no way to actually assess it unless you're a cadaver and we can piece apart your body.
I'm not ready to go there quite
Me either. So,
and then I don't even get the information after.
Then you don't even know. You got to give it to your family. But most of all that's out there now is based off of the original test, which is hydrostatic weighing, which another term for that is underwater weighing, right? And this was done probably 100 years ago, where they took cadavers. They were all middle-aged white males, cadavers, and they had people come in and dissect all the fat from their body.
Really?
Yep. And they ground it all up, put it in a jar, and put it underwater. And they found the density of 100% fat mass. Right?
That's pretty neat. Little history lesson.
A little history lesson. So they found the density of fat mass, did the same thing for everything else, ground it up, put it underwater, found the density of fat-free mass, right? And they found that the density of 100% fat mass in that population was 0.9 grams per milliliter. The density of water is somewhere around 1.
Okay.
Right? So if you put pure fat in water, it floats. It's less dense, right? If you put lean mass, fat-free mass, right, the density of that sample is 1.1 grams per milliliter. Okay. So it sank right to the bottom, right? It's more dense.
So it just separate in a manner of speaking.
Yeah. So it's one sank, one floated. So when you do any kind of composition, it's all based off of body density. What's the density of the tissue you're measuring, right? So when you go in the hydrostatic weighing tank, it's just a big pool, and you're sitting on a chair, right? Most likely you have some kind of a dive belt on so you don't float out of the chair, because I've measured some people that are 50% body fat or more, right? And they would probably start, going to the top. But
oh, man, yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? So it keeps you in the chair, and you weigh all that stuff out, and it's all zeroed out before you do the test. And the tricky part with this is not everybody likes this test, because number one, you got to be comfortable in water. Number two, we have to measure what's called your residual lung volume. So if I told you right now, take a big breath in and blow out as much air as you possibly can, like to the nth degree, you've got nothing left. You still have some amount of air left in your lungs to keep the pressures consistent to where they don't collapse on each other, right?
Okay.
That's residual lung volume. We need to know that when you're underwater, right? Because that would cause you to look more fat if we didn't know it. Because if you blow up, your floaties on your arm, that helps you float.
But I'm guessing the second you blow, you suck air back in, you have air to...
Well, you're underwater doing this.
Oh, you don't have like a tube?
Well, you can. So okay. So when in our lab we measured that number outside of the water. So we measured it. There's a whole nother, I won't even get into it, it'll bore you to death. But we could measure that number, and then you try and repeat that when you're underwater. So that's the biggest.
Oh, so you measure it above water and then underwater. Yep. So
there are some systems I've seen, if you really want to get as accurate as possible, you're measuring that underwater so you can get exactly the number, how much liters of air are still in your lungs while you're underwater to get a true measurement. But it's a little bit more expensive, a little bit more challenging. But so when you're underwater, this is the most challenging part for most people. As you go in the water, you get lowered to like just your chin and your head is above water. You lean forward and you let out as much air as you possibly can till you get to that residual volume number while you're underwater, right? And then you got to sit there for about 10 seconds.
And
hanging out.
Some people freak out.
Oh, some people freak out big time because they're like, you're gasping at that point, but you got to hang out and you got to be comfortable and you got to be still,
right?
Because you're sitting on essentially a scale, and we got to read how much you weigh underwater. And if you're moving at all, that scale is bouncing all over the place, right? And then you got to do that, and you have to repeat that 2 to 3 times in a row, get a very similar number, because we're trying to get like we want to know.
It takes some time to do.
It takes like a half hour.
Oh, that's actually not as long as I would think.
If we know, and then if you're going to measure your lung volume, might take a little bit longer.
Do you guys do VO2 max there too?
We do.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I've tested 1 million people VO2 max. But that's so all of the other tests you've done, like your biological impedance when you're you're holding the scale, it's all based off of hydrostatic weighing. It's all based off of body density stuff. Your skin fold measurements, that's all based off of hydrostatic weighing.
Because like I understand the aspect of like sending the waves through the body, and then it tries to. I'm guessing as it bounces, it's seeing how thick the walls are, right? Or
well, it's impedance to the flow of the current.
And I'm guessing also by putting in my weight, or by seeing my weight, my age, my height, and if I'm male or female, is there some metrics that it already knows about being male or female, or
so
this age or this weight?
Those are all based off
height.
of what's called a regression equation.
Okay,
are you familiar with those?
Mm-mm.
So
I don't think so.
A regression equation is like you want to figure out, a certain measurement, right? But I can predict based off these 4 things with close accuracy. That's going to be the answer for this question, right? So like things like male and female, we carry body fat different places, and there's going to be a difference because of where we're carrying it, right? Age is different because obviously just based off of a population, the older we get, the more body fat we have, the less muscle mass we have, unless you use it. If you don't use it, you lose it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm putting it on, and I'm gonna be putting it on in my 60s and 70s.
Yeah, right. So it's like we're trying to predict this number based off of these pieces of data, and that's what's like you're doing with like your bioelectrical impedance. It's looking at like age, how old you are, or sorry, what your gender is, how many times per week you exercise, blah 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 blah. Because all that is built into when they made these black box equations. They went and tested 1,000 people of this age range, of this fitness level, and if you match that, your prediction is pretty good in that percent body fat. That's how these machines work. It's just all statistics.
Yeah, that's what I figured. The more data they have, the better chance that they have of like being more accurate.
Yeah, so some of these might be like it's called like a big R. That's like your prediction capacity essentially. And if it's like 1.0 is like these 4 things you looked at, 100% predict the number that you get out of it.
Okay.
Some of these things that you're using might be like 0.88. So like 88% of the answer can be essentially detailed by the 4 things you measured.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. So you think that's pretty good, but like, there's a lot of variability in there.
12% error.
A lot of error. That's a lot of error.
Yeah, that is. So you're probably one of the most difficult, not difficult, but like you medically, you know some stuff, and I'm just like, okay, focus. Like, what's he talking? Like,
I know. I'm trying to like make sure it's not everybody's going to fall asleep when they listen to this.
Yeah. No. Well, it doesn't make me fall asleep. I'm just trying to comprehend some of this stuff. Like I'm just like, oh, I should have been a little. I thought I was prepared, but then I'm like, again, what you're talking about has the words that you're using are just like that's what they're called. So, anyways, but no, this has been fun.
Yeah.
You having a good time?
And yeah, for sure.
I also realized right as we started, I'm like, why the hell did I tell him to keep his mouth in front of the mic? Like he does a podcast. like that was like the first word came out, and I was like, oh yeah, he knows exactly where to be at.
Hey,
this is perfect.
You never know, You don't.
But yeah, I forget. But if you've never done a podcast, people are usually like, trying to sit back here.
They think the mic works. Like you can be over there, it still works.
You can hear the difference.
Yeah,
and I don't know how people don't hear me and be like, oh, like I hear more echo in my voice.
These are clear as hell too. I like.
Yeah,
these.
I'm actually.
Are these new?
Huh?
Are these newer?
No, when we bought them, we pay like $35 or $50 a piece for these on Amazon.
I might need to get
and
upgrade.
It's a kit, so it comes with the cord, it comes with this, and it comes with it's the whole thing.
That is nice.
So, but yeah, and Keenan also we use a board, so we have like a board. So I think there are things that he does and we just record the audio into the computer. So there may be things that he does to make things sound nicer.
I'm sure it is. I don't have one of those at my. I don't have a Keenan at my house.
Well, Keenans are available for rent. I've honestly had like 2 or 3 different guests like walk away like getting his number and being like, I'm gonna give you a call.
Yeah, right.
Well, this is not really what he does. I just asked him to help me out with something, and
he's a master of all trades.
He just figures out things.
Yeah.
I was like, I need your help making a podcast. Can you learn this? And he's like, all right.
He's got a big intelligent brain.
One of the smartest people I know.
Yeah.
See. He really is. All right.
Yeah.
Coaches, athletes, research.
We can talk more about the DEXA. We didn't dive into that yet.
Oh no, I definitely want to continue with that. I'm just seeing. Oh yeah, we haven't really talked about recovery. That was one thing I wanted because I know you're big into and we could probably dive down about recovery. And then the last thing was this stuff. So really, the recovery and this, and then we'll just see where it leads. And
cool. You never know.
When we hit the end, we hit the end. So tell us a little bit about the DEXA.
Yeah. So the DEXA it's dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. It's a lot.
I would not remember. Maybe if I worked with them, I would remember.
Yeah, you would remember. They're cool, and they were originally created for more of a medical purpose when women going through menopause trying to get an indicator and a measurement of their bone mineral density, right? So that was kind of the original design of the tool, and then through technology and progression, they've adapted some of the software to figure out, well, what is your actual body composition, right? Like how much is fat, how much is muscle, alongside of like what's your bone mineral density at, right? So it's kind of like the best of both worlds in terms of all of your composition, because we can get all those things.
Gives you the biggest breakdown,
right? And so some of the older ones, even maybe 5-10 years ago, there's been a lot of changes, even just like in your phone, right? The pixelation on your phone compared to 10 years ago, night and day, right? So that's like this technology, beyond. But that's how some of these,
A, B, and B, or B, C.
So if you're using a machine that's 10 years old, that measurement's definitely not a gold standard, because what happens is they take the pixels. It takes a scan of your body and it pixelates it to a picture, just like any other camera would, right? Those pixels were so large. And the way it works is that whatever was the majority of that pixel, fat or lean tissue, it's how that whole pixel was that.
Oh.
Right?
I think Brian Shaw, the strongest man in the world,
yeah,
won it like 2 or 3. I think they did one. Does it show up in little colors too?
It does.
And so like he was a bunch of green, like lighter and brighter greens, because that was his muscle.
Yeah, whatever you set it to, it gives you the. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so you can set the different colors.
I'm not that good at it, but I'm sure
I'm wondering
if
that was the machine that's probably what he used.
It could have been. It could have been
pretty cool.
So the newer ones, obviously the pixels have gotten so small, but it's still, the operation's still the same. If 51% is fat, it's still going to say the whole pixel's fat. It's just the mechanism of the tool. But it gives you a much more detailed analysis of what composition actually is, because you're getting bone, you're getting mineral, you're getting fat mass, you're getting fat-free mass, all that kind of stuff. But that is considered the gold standard now for body composition, is a DEXA scan. Some people will still tell you if you have hydrostatic weighing with measured residual lung volume while underwater, that's still a gold standard. But I would still go back and say, like, well, if you're a middle-aged Caucasian male, it would be, because that's what the sample is based off of. Because we know now, like, some different ethnicities have different densities of fat-free mass. It's not the same as that original sample.
Really?
So there's tedious stuff in there.
So your heritage that
you have to be aware of.
Your heritage can actually
exactly.
have
But if the goal, like you mentioned before, here's what it comes down to. The goal, we don't really care what exactly your percent body fat is.
We just want to see progression.
We want to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Right? So I could care less what it is. As long as I can test it now and know this is the test repeatability of the tool is always the same, and I can get a now then later picture, then that's all I care about.
Exactly. So, but
if you want to know,
right,
and
if you want something that's,
I
guess, a little bit more accurate than what you're going to find out in the everyday world, the scales, in body. But if you want something that you feel like is going to be a little bit more accurate, those are
ways.
Options.
Yeah, and if you're close to a university or a hospital, it might be worth some research on your end if you really want to know a more gold standard measure of your composition. Look what studies they're doing. You can get in for free, get your measurement done. You can be a part of a study. You can whatever that might be.
You can even pay at UK, can't you?
You can pay and have it done too, just as a regular person popping in, like, hey, I want to know.
They have it.
Yeah. So there are opportunities for that.
So you got to work with those machines for 4 years, pretty much.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years probably. I did quite a bit of that. And
you said you also did a lot of the VO2 max stuff.
Did a bunch of testing of that. Yeah.
What did you think about working with that and seeing people's different lung capacities?
Oh, it's wild, man. I tested the cross country team a couple of times.
Okay.
And you have to basically kick them off the treadmill because they'll just run that thing into the ground. You know what I mean?
Is that how it works? Is that the objective, is to get you out of breath?
Well,
completely get you.
We want to essentially tax all 3 energy systems.
Okay.
And the last one to basically crap out is your aerobic, right?
Right.
So it's like you start off at a lower intensity, you run for or walk, depending on where your fitness level is, for 2 minutes. If we still see signs of you having more room, we say, you want to keep going? And some people will be like, no, I'm done. So it's like, we don't, okay, thanks for coming in, but this is not.
Right.
But you get like a person that really wants to know and they're motivated to do it, because I've done this. I've measured myself 10 or 12 times, and it's not a cool experience. I mean, it is, but it's hard.
Right.
And if you have more room, it's like, okay, let's see if we can go for 2 more minutes. We measure, we see what how much oxygen you're bringing in, how much CO2 you're blowing off. We see where your heart rate is. We see all these other pieces of information that we can kind of predict and say, you have more room, but like, do you want to keep going? And we get to the certain point to where if a person is fit enough and they have the motivation to do it, they get to that point to where even if we increase you intensity-wise, you're not going to increase any of your physiological measurements. You've reached the end of what your capacity is aerobically.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can only breathe in so much and blow off so much. And you divide those two numbers, it can only go so high.
Right.
Right? Because if you're blowing off more than you're bringing in, then you're going to pass out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
kind of need oxygen to live, right?
Yeah. So from a very basic standpoint, that's kind of a way to look at it. But you can see physiologically.
Didn't Lance Armstrong supposedly have like a ridiculous VO2 max?
It was pretty high, but runners typically have higher than cyclists because it's just the weight bearing capacity.
Now, is that more physiology or is that more training your body, or is that a little bit of both?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah, because some people will have some genetic component. Like if you and I were to go into a lab and get a measurement of our mitochondria. And our mitochondrial enzymes is the fancy word they use for it. Through training, you can improve both of those. With detraining, those things will decrease because they're very non-efficient energetically to have.
Right.
For the person that's not going to use them. So if you have those through training, therefore you're increased your aerobic capacity and your aerobic fitness. Right.
Right.
So, but some people have more of those, like just
naturally,
genetically, right?
So it just helps them out.
Yeah, and it goes back to your mom.
Really?
So the mother's side.
When I go get my VO2 max, if it's not good,
you inherit the mitochondria side of things from the female side.
Can you? Is there a way to analyze how much you have or what your capability is?
The best way is just to jump on the treadmill and we do that.
Okay.
We don't really need to know like how much is in your actual muscle and blood and stuff like that. We can just see that if you go and run on a treadmill.
Treadmill and do that.
Yeah. So usually,
what do the track runners do then? Like because like they probably can just keep going and going and going.
Oh yeah, for like
or do you just speed them up to a point where they're going so fast they can't hold that pace of speed?
Yeah, you use that and elevation too because you can increase it. So most of the time we're using elevation to tax somebody because for a person that can run a 4-minute mile, you're not gonna, you know what I mean. So it's like you can't have a very quick burst of. You can't just be on there for 4 minutes because we need to see where you steady state at. If that makes sense, right? We need to know a steady state number because that is the point in time we can say, hey, this is what your fitness actually is compared to just a weird like event of you hyperventilating or whatever.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? So some people start off walking and don't even get to a jog. It's just like walking up with elevation. Some people that are very fit, you have to, using speed and grade. But
you've seen the Rocky movies?
I have.
When he fights the Russian.
Yeah.
His VO2 max was on point, I feel like, in that movie.
It was on point. It was on point.
It looked like it was for that scene where he was running up the treadmill.
It was on point. Yeah. So that's a pretty cool test. You can do that. So if you want to do that, I'm sure you can, if you're close to a university that does that, you can get in on that action too. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
So anybody that wants to know that about themselves.
Yeah. Cross-country skiers, though, have been seen to have the highest VO2 maxes.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it because of the elevation the elevation and the cold?
No, it's mainly because it's the most taxing to the most parts of your body because you're using both arm and leg to go, right? Have you ever cross-country skied before?
Not cross-country, no.
Yeah.
I have skied, but I mean, by the end of the day, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, cross-country
just
skiing is
gravity
brutal.
Pull me.
Yeah. That's why I have a huge appreciation for biathlon in the Olympics because it's like the most excruciating aerobic event, and all of a sudden you got to get your heart rate back down to like 40 to fire
Don't they do a
rifle.
Cross-country? Okay, yeah, so is that what it's called? Is biathlon? Where they do the shooting and then they...
Yep.
How far do they have to ski? Do you know?
I can't remember it's usually a loop and they come back down to the, the place where they're firing their air rifles, but it's like max out your heart rate and then come back down and chill to try and hit, 5 or 6 targets. That's why that event is so wild.
Because they take as much time as they need to get their heart rate down. But the objective is to be able to shoot as soon as you possibly can and hit those targets.
Yeah, right. So if heart rate's like 180 and you're trying to fire a rifle, if you've ever done that before, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to fire between beats.
Maybe I'll just get some lucky.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I can't fire well enough with normal heart rate, let alone exhaust. I mean, I couldn't imagine getting off the assault bike
and then trying to
fire
shoot something.
a weapon.
Yeah. That's what it is, though. So
I probably couldn't hit somebody 5 feet in front of me.
Yeah, right. So hopefully the person that you're running away from is running really hard.
Yeah.
And trying to
But I mean, the assault bike, the record right now, I think, is 21 seconds for 25 calories. But everybody that's done it under 25 seconds for 25 calories has thrown up almost within 10 or 15, almost within 5 to 10 minutes after, if not sooner. I had this one client, this kid, And he saw that he could be third on the board. He's like, oh, I can beat that time. I'm like, go for it. Which is, at the time, it was, I think, like 35 seconds for 25 calories. And I'm like, all right, we'll do it after the workout. And he's like, no, I'm going to do it now. And I'm like, you don't want to do that now. And he's like, no, I got this. He did it. 2 minutes later, he's like, I got to go home. He started throwing up. He's like, I'm done. And I'm
Brutal.
like, he lives a couple doors down. And that I trained him. He's a baseball player. And I was like, I told you to wait till me.
He's on the board, though. He's in infamy.
Well, he was on the board, but I think somebody else has now beat that time.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, I don't know.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, I think everybody that's on the board now is all 25 seconds or less, or like 27 seconds or less for 25 calories. If you want to try to beat it, we'll let you.
I'm not up for that today. I got skinny jeans on.
Think about this. I'll record it. You'll be on our version of Guinness Book of World Records and skinny jeans. No one. I mean,
nobody's done
record,
that.
No one's even done it in skinny jeans.
That's its own record.
That's a.
Yeah. I think skinny jeans is its own classification for that, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's right. If you could get it, yeah. I've literally held the skinny jean record for the last 10 years. No one's thrown on a pair to try to beat it.
No chafing. It's good.
Oh my gosh. So recovery.
Yeah.
Recovery is I know that's one thing that you're really big on. I know you probably do a fair amount of research because I mean, recovery can be, well, really one of the most important parts of growth or whatever goals that you're trying to achieve. So I want to dive down that tunnel with you for a minute.
Yeah. No, I worked with a strength coach. His name is Jim Laird, and he used to work out of Lexington. I think he recently moved. Learned a ton from him, but he always had a saying, and I don't know if I'm going to say this exactly right, but it was like, you can't overcome what you can't recover from, right? Essentially meaning like if you haven't recovered enough to tax yourself with another training stimulus, then you're wasting your time because you're only going to go to a certain level. But you're basically taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, if that makes sense, right? So once I kind of worked with him and realized how much time he would spend with just regular people or athletes on making sure you're doing stuff outside of the training setting so you can come back in and just totally max it out with me, you know what I mean? Then that's what we need to do. So that's when I really started to dive into the different methods of recovery, and that could mean so much for everybody. It's different things for different people, but some of the things I jump into right away, and anybody that works with me right out of the gate, I send them a foam roller, a stick roller, and a lacrosse ball. And those 3 tools can be used mainly for soft tissue. And when I first started to look at this, I was like, oh, that it makes so much sense. You feel better. There's a noticeable difference before and after you do it. But I always thought it was like, helping to recover my muscles most of the time. And there is some level of that until I started diving into what it actually does for you. Like soft tissue release with those 3 tools. And the biggest thing is you really get the most benefit if you've ever used a foam roller before or a stick roller
I have.
Or a lacrosse ball, like any of those things, right?
I've cried while on a foam roller.
You should be. You should be crying.
I find that point and I sit there and hold it. And I'm like,
if you're not very uncomfortable, you're wasting your time, number one. But what you essentially get from any of those 3 tools is you get what's called an acute, so directly after, and it could last for 5 or 10 or 30 minutes, whatever that might be, improvement in range of motion.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've actually, I think it was at Harvard. Harvard did a research on this, and really what they learned, and it kind of boiled down to, is that like foam rolling for the sake of foam rolling is not necessarily going to give you that much.
Mm-hmm.
But foam rolling for the sake of finishing it up to go exercise, to do a physical activity, to compete for something directly after using it seemed to really help.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
But if you're just literally like, this is part of your routine, you just like at the end of your workout, you decide to foam roll because you think it's going to help lengthen your muscles, and it might help fix a couple knots here and there.
Yeah.
Like in a massage standard.
For sure.
But outside of that, it's not really going to give you that much more. And they even said that too much foam rolling can damage tissue, supposedly.
I'm sure it could.
I don't know if you read anything on that.
I'm sure it could if you're using a certain amount of force or whatever.
Yeah.
It probably could. But that really like started to get me thinking about, why I'm using it. And so the biggest benefit for me is when you're using those tools, you're essentially affecting the fascia around your muscle.
Right.
So every muscle, for those that are listening that aren't familiar with that term, there's a very thin layer of like almost like a tendon-like layer, very thin, that surrounds a lot of your muscle groups, and it kind of keeps them in position where they need to be, right? But that fascia also can transmit and transduce force, right? It's part of the tendon complex of the muscle and tendon, so it's important. But what happens when you're not moving a lot, when body temperature is lower, that fascia tends to get very stiff, and that means it's stiff when you try to move. It's uncomfortable. It can be a little painful, right? So foam rolling and stick rolling, all those things make your fascia more malleable, more easily stretched, and more flexible. That's why you likely feel like you can move better after you foam rolled. You just feel better in general, right?
Yeah.
You're
I definitely
feeling
feel
that.
looser.
Yeah.
Like there's a direct correlation, and I don't think it is a placebo effect.
Yeah, definitely not.
But then again, it might be the pain that I just put myself through to.
No, 100%, right? So you've adapted that fascia to be more malleable, more flexible, so you move more freely.
Right.
And that transmits into now you can work through a greater range of motion with your structured lifts, which you can get stronger and more comfortable in better technique at the bottom part of a squat or a deadlift. So you've just improved strength through a greater range of motion and your capacity to move through a greater range of motion. That's the benefit of using those tools, right?
And they're quick.
And quick.
And if you
they're cheap.
if you had the time and the money, you would probably be doing yoga most days. You would also be doing actual range of motion training, which is similar to yoga in the aspect of like you're trying to get to your in range of motion, but you're trying to get to your in range of motion that you have control of.
Exactly.
So
active range of motion.
Active range of motion, where yoga will take you well past that, but it also helps lengthen the muscle. So there's, again, a little bit of both between the two, and then you'd be training on top of that, and then in theory you could probably alleviate the foam roller because you'd be doing a little bit better with the range of motion training in the yoga. However, that's an extra 2 hours or 3 hours a day you got to put in, where foam rolling you can do. That was the one nice thing. I would do foam rolling every single day before I worked out, probably 15, 20 minutes.
That's a lot.
And I think I was putting too much time, but I was doing a full body. Like I had a whole routine where I worked my whole body, and because of my knee and leg issues, I always felt like there's a lot more pain there, so I was always trying to get it out. But over time, I think my body got adjusted to it, and it did help directly before a workout or going into a workout. But if I ever did it outside of a workout, looking back now, I don't think it did a lot for me unless I needed to do something directly after.
Right. It could be, or just like, you're stiff and you need to move. It's just something nice to get up and move around.
Yes, and for some people that don't foam roll, and I'm talking about because I did a lot of it. For people that have never foam rolled or don't foam roll a lot, you're going to get some benefit. You're just going to feel.
Exactly, right? You'll feel pretty good for the hour after.
Yeah, because it's literally like a massage in a way. But once your body gets adjusted to it, it's
right. Yeah,
your body's just like, oh yeah, you massaged this yesterday. The day before.
You will accommodate very quickly if you're consistent with it. So if you've never done it before, I would get like a very soft foam roller or do it on some carpet because it's going to be super painful. And then you'll notice like 2 weeks later, it's like this used to hurt really bad, now it doesn't anymore. Right? You're progressing.
You can upgrade to all my foam rollers are hard foam
to
rollers.
A PVC pipe.
Yeah, pretty much with little bumps at the end. You know, to really add in some extra pain.
Yeah, so that's like one component of the rehab thing for me, because I think that's important just to get prepared for a workout, and I want to get the most out of my workout, right?
Of course.
So that's part of that. The second part is, there's so much on the other end of like, stretching work, is it worth your time? What's the purpose of it? There's a ton of stuff out there for, that we could talk about, but I personally still like to do some static stretching after a workout. I'm not doing it forever.
Oh, really? After?
Yeah, after.
I have most of my clients do it before
Do you?
into a workout.
Yeah, sometimes I will too.
After 5-minute warm up, then about 5 to 7 minutes of like 3 or 4 stretches that I think mostly lower body stuff, so that their lower body would be good for the workout.
Yeah, it is nice to kind of take it through that range of motion. After, if you do it before, if you spend too much time static stretching before you go into a workout, what ends up happening is you can actually decrease your capacity to generate force because you've lengthened the mechanical structure inside of the muscle to where it's not going to generate as much tension within the muscle. That's getting really technical. Most people aren't going to stretch to that point. You know what I mean?
Right. But I'm always, that's something I didn't know. Or if I did, I hadn't logged it away.
Yeah.
So if you have like an athlete that takes stretching very serious, you may not want to have them spend a bunch of time stretching before.
Exactly. It'd be more dynamic stretching.
But for some, more dynamic. But for some people, they're probably not going to do enough stretching within their 5 minutes or whatever to hit that, for that to be an issue.
Exactly. Most people.
If anything, it might actually help them if they don't
100%
do a lot of physical stretching and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's an important part of just fitness in general is flexibility. And I'll have people work with me specifically. They're like 50 years or older. They're like, dude, my flexibility is terrible. I've done nothing for 50 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this is going to be a very slow, tedious process for you if you're cool with that.
Well, yeah, all my clients, really 60 or 70. Most of my clients, 60 or 70 or above. I mean, it's slow progress.
Yeah, so it's it's anytime you can get. Like, I'm never going to say don't stretch before a workout, because if that's the only time you're going to stretch, then just do it. You know what I mean?
So most of my stretching I do in I try to do the steam room and the sauna and sometimes the hot tub every single night at the Y.
Yeah.
And if I can, I try to go through a series of 15 or 20 minutes in the sauna stretching.
I like it.
And it's so good.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so
I mean,
good.
stretching works the best when muscle temperature is higher.
Oh,
so like
that's why I do it in there.
Yeah.
Because my body stays. I mean, that's actually one of the things with my knee recovery that if you have, I would say if you have access to a sauna, even if you don't like it, go do it every day, stretch in there, and you'll start to feel you can make your body feel better by just doing that. Or hot yoga.
100%.
Hot yoga. Have you done hot yoga?
I haven't, but I've
Really?
heard good things.
We're gonna do hot yoga together.
Yeah.
You come do some hot yoga with me?
I'll try it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome and horrible at the same time.
Right. Yeah. See what you're made of.
Exactly. Yeah, but go on about the recovery because I was just really interesting listening about it.
Yeah. So I think another important part of the recovery process is muscle activation outside of a workout.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, because part of what is muscle tone, I think that word gets thrown out a lot. It's like, well, I want to tone up. So you basically want your muscles to look like more lean and more cut, right? But the actual term muscle tone, are you familiar with any of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically the neurological component of saying, hey, your brain,
not this, but
this,
yeah.
this is like the real physiological, like this is what tone is.
Okay.
It's a nervous system component to where it's like your brain is talking to that muscle to say, hey, you need to be engaged. So it's like preparedness for engagement, right? Has nothing to do with like how cut you are.
Right.
So sometimes muscles can be overly talked to from the brain, right? There's just too much engagement. And sometimes that can come off as like, you get that upper trap. It's just like, man, it's just like, it's always there. It's like tight, never wants to turn off. It's like, well, you probably have been sitting with your shoulders up, stressed out at your desk for 5 hours. And now your shoulders think they have to work all day long. You know what I mean? So that, like, there's too much tone in those muscles.
Oh.
So I found that like very specific targeted muscle activation movements, that could be like, just for example, like hip circles, quadruped position, dog peas, glute bridges, that kind of stuff.
Dog peas.
I
call it
fire hydrants. Yeah, I call
dog-
them dog. I'm still old school. They're dog peas.
Is that what they were called back in the day? Someone finally was like, "This isn't PC."
Yeah.
Fire hydrants.
It's a dog
Can
pea.
we go?
Yeah.
It won't. Fire hydrants won't be PC. You can't disrespect a fire hydrant like that.
You can't. Dogs pee everywhere too, not just fire hydrants.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so those things, in my opinion, if you do them consistently, can tell the brain like this is what proper engagement looks like. They don't always have to be turned on. Because I found that when they're always turned on and chronically turned on through that nervous system pathway we talked about before, then that's where like additional tightness can come from. That's where like soreness and pain can come from. So it doesn't really look like, the term recovery, but in my opinion, if you're doing those things on a regular basis, then you're going to be more prepared to work out and you're going to get more benefit from that workout.
So they're things that aren't necessarily directly recovery, but things that you feel the need that help with recovery.
Exactly.
That you can be doing.
Yes, it's not like, because most people, I think, when they think recovery, it's like, well, am I ricing? Am I resting?
Right.
Am I getting heat exposure? Like, am I taking cold
But
bath
there's
tub?
so much more than that too.
Yeah, for me, there's stuff that you can do anywhere, at any point in time. That's going to help you be more prepared. You know what I mean? It helps you feel better. Because that's the goal for me. Like we mentioned before. Like I think you and I talked about this previously.
Of course. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to wake up and feel crappy every day.
Right.
I wanna feel
Sometimes
good.
I want to feel sore, but I want to be like, that's a good. There's a difference between
and
a good
if that
sore.
balance is going to work out twice a week and eating pretty healthy and you feel like you're fit and you feel good. I mean, maybe that's what it is. But it's figuring out whatever that balance is. Or, I guess we talked in the last podcast. There is no such thing as balance.
Yeah.
But what balance means to you,
right?
I think is more or less. Yes, you're right. There is no real balance in the world, but there is a level of balance that you compromise with yourself. I'm like, okay, this is pretty balanced. I'm okay with this.
Yeah, right. And sometimes 2 days a week of structured workout is good. That's a great goal for people.
And if we go with the Bob Tome program, you do machines as hard as you can twice a week for 30 minutes. You eat fairly healthy, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah.
And in many aspects, I would agree with that. So his thing is that you need more than as far as active recovery. He thinks working out is the most that your body should push from no more than 30 minutes at a time. But the 30 minutes better be 110%. You know what I mean? There's no cut in the corners. So you really got to give it. And then he thinks recovery the rest of the time.
Yeah, I think it's a good approach. If the person's physiology has adapted enough to be able to withstand that kind of of a stimulus.
Well, and the good thing is that he has 45. I can't remember, but it's 2,000 square feet of machines. So he constantly every 6 to 8 weeks he changes up so that the body never like we talked about.
Yep.
I mean you'll find this out with any personal trainer. Most personal trainers out there, it's probably not the best idea to do the same program for 12 months out of the year. Like, I definitely agree. Change it up, make your body think. Even if it's a rep count change or
velocity of how fast you're pressing it or whatever.
Yeah, time under tension.
Yep.
So that's his other thing with the machines is that instead of doing reps, he does as slow as possible there and back. I think it's really 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. So it's all about time under tension. If you make it to a minute or less, you got to actually go down next. And he usually goes in increments of it seems like 1.5 pounds to 5 pounds, depending on where you're at. But if you hit a minute and a half, then you get to from a minute to a minute and a half. You get to stay at that weight next week. And if it makes it from a minute and a half to 2 minutes, then you go up next week. So my objective is to hit the 1:30 to 2 minute. And I try to get to 2 minutes if I can. So
that sounds brutal. That's the great thing about fitness. It's like you can do that approach, or you can press it as fast as you possibly can. Yeah. And still get a very similar result.
Yes,
but there's, it's all about a balance. There's that word again.
Yes, exactly.
Of being consistent, but also having
So you just bring the weight way up.
Yeah.
You bring the weight up even higher if you're moving a little bit quicker.
Because I'm assuming it's 6 second concentric.
Yeah, so
that's not a whole lot of weight.
Concentric.
Yeah.
So so I think leg press, I'm doing 360, 370, somewhere around there would be my guess. So, not a ton of weight, but you do that for 2 minutes straight, super slow.
Yeah, not a ton of weight relative
I'm
to what you
walking
can
funny.
do. Yeah, right.
So, the worst thing he makes me do is the abduction and adduction, AB and AD adduction, because those muscles are they're strong, but they're not anywhere nearly as strong as the rest of mine. So every week after doing it, at least the last couple of weeks, I've just been sore.
I'm sure you
I still feel it in my. We worked out almost a full week. No, wait a minute. We worked out late last week, so we worked out 5 days ago, and my legs are still sore.
Still feeling it. Yeah.
So what do you do for recovery personally, as far as active recovery? Do you shoot for X amount of sleep, not this much caffeine? Finish eating by this? What are some things that you find work for you personally?
That's a great question. So I work towards consistency with a lot of that stuff you mentioned. So I try and be as consistent as I possibly can with sleep and wake times. I think that's super important. What you'll find if you ever dive into that circadian code book is that when you break away from that, you essentially feel what's called social jet lag, and to where hey, on the weekend I'm going to stay up until 1 o'clock when I normally go to bed at 11 or 10, right? You essentially have gone ahead 2 time zones or 3 time zones, right? And we all know how crappy you feel.
Oh yeah,
when you do that. So that's the social jet lag component, and that essentially is not. It's kind of frowned upon in terms of your physiology, right? So sleeping cycles for me is important. So I try to get to bed and wake up no matter what day of the week it is, same time every day. Right. Obviously, we're all humans, and that doesn't happen, but majority of that happens.
Sometimes you just want to stay up late.
Yeah, right. You want to see friends or whatever. I'm a huge proponent. I usually drink a little bit of salted water. It's usually maybe just under a liter every morning before I eat or drink anything.
Salted water.
Now,
do you do Himalayan sea salt?
I do.
Okay.
Yep. And then I'll eat my breakfast and then coffee after. And for me, I run the hottest in the morning. That's just kind of my natural metabolism. So I usually eat 1,200 calories in the morning. I'm only a 150-pound person, so that's
I like a big morning personally.
Yeah.
Not to feel bloated full, but to feel full, because usually I'm going, and sometimes I might not hit lunch right when I want to.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's for me, that works great, because I could work out a half hour after that. I'm just I'm just conditioned to that because I've done it for so long. You know what I mean? And then I like to be very consistent when the time that I work out. I found that to be very important with just the way in which your brain works, the way in which you're metabolizing food.
So do you try to eat do you try to work out about the same time every day?
I do.
And what time is that for
I
you?
eat probably 8:30 in the morning.
In the morning, really?
Yep.
Wow,
yep.
I'm
Not everybody has that luxury.
Sorry to make you miss your workout this
morning.
morning.
No, you're good. Not everybody has that luxury of that time, but I think if you find a time that does work for you, you can kind of, progress your physiology to adapt to that.
Yeah, and if the time that you have doesn't work and you're able to move your schedule around and play with some other times, I don't know what you do for work out there, but if you can, it may behoove you to try to go into work later and try to work out earlier in the morning.
Exactly.
And, because I think a lot of retail jobs out there, they'll work with you on your schedule. So if you find that working out in the morning is better or working out in the evening is better and they're willing to work with you and working out's important, try it.
I'd go for it for sure. Yeah. I found I do like intermittent fasting, but not to the extent of like the 8-hour eating window that most people have done. It's not.
I just forget to eat, but I call it intermittent fasting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is. It all really is, because you're fasting when you sleep. So everybody intermittent fast. That term just gets thrown around a lot because the media loves to talk about it.
Yes.
But
it's also an easy way to talk to people and have them understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, yeah, I know that.
Yeah, right. So most of like the previous studies have been revolved around an 8-hour eating window. I found that to not be sustainable long term. It works great if you're like, I have a 3-month weight loss phase I want to try and do. You can probably grind through that, but you're not going to want to do it forever. Some people can, but most can't. The research will really tell you like anywhere between 8 and 12 hours of eating window, the benefits you get from that are very similar, right? So I like to do it like a 10.5 to 11-hour eating window.
Okay.
My first meal of the day is usually 6:30 in the morning. My last meal of the day is usually 5:30 p.m. in the day.
That's hard.
Right? But I go to bed at 8:30 or 9.
Okay.
So
people still want to be snacking. Even I.
They do. But when you turn the kitchen on, when the kitchen doesn't want to be on, that affects sleep cycles, brain waves.
Yes.
It's going to affect secretion of certain hormones at nighttime.
Right. So what I'm hearing is a very strict routine.
I don't call it strict.
Well, okay, not strict, but you've come up with a routine that the stricter you can be to it without it getting in the way of certain things, I'm sure, the better, right? Because you found that the better you stick to this routine that we're going through right now, the better you function, so the better you can keep to the routine.
100%, right? Yeah.
It's almost its own cycle, right?
Yeah, and when you break away from it, you realize how crappy you feel immediately. Right. So it's like, well, then it becomes so much easier to be on that.
And I think a lot of people feel like they don't want to feel like they're like, I've got to do this because it's on my, like, I know I feel better when I do this. And so that it's getting in that mindset, like, I want to do this because I'm going to feel better. Because there are going to be certain things in your routine some days that you're like, I don't want to do this today. Yeah. But you know that if you don't do it, or you don't do it, and then you feel crappy.
Yeah. But that was my decision not to do it, so then I'm okay with it.
But you're, so even though you didn't do it to maybe feel better, you still felt crappy because you didn't do it. So you should have just done it, and you probably would have felt better. Yeah. And so, that's the cycle within.
Yeah. So even things like, most of my clients would be like, well, all the trainers I've worked with say I can't drink any alcohol. It's like, and then I was like, well, how long did you work with that person? They're like, not very long. It's like, because they're omitting some things that, like, do we need to omit those things? Right. It's like, so I never tell anybody that you can't drink anything. Right. I mean, it's always your choice to drink something, right, but don't expect certain results to happen. Right. And then
depending on what degree or what license you have, I don't think technically, certain people you might be able to, but I can't. I couldn't tell someone technically, like, you can't drink soda because that's a dietitian's job, not a nutrition. What I can do is I can make a suggestion and explain why I think a soda would be bad, but you have to make that decision.
And I think that's the best approach anyway, because when you sit there and tell someone point blank, this is what you need to do, that person's not going to do that.
And they're coming to me for more, and probably you in most aspects of fitness, in the aspect of fitness and accountability. And then I offer nutrition, but I don't push it. I'm just like, hey, this is here. I make everybody do a food book. I go over what I think is good and bad in their diet. And then I'm like, this is part of your package, but you don't have to use it. Right. I'm not going to push it upon you because I know it's hard enough just getting here and working out with 100%. Me. Let's not talk about food till you're ready. But I've had a couple clients that have slowly made changes as they've gotten more comfortable with me. And I have one client that's been with me 6 months, and he's a completely different person. I mean, he's lost almost 30 pounds, and he's 66, and you'd be surprised what this guy can do at 66. I mean, he's very, like, I have him do these HIIT workouts, and he just destroys them. He did 60 push-ups the first time throughout the course of his workout last week.
Wow, that's incredible.
Which he couldn't do 5 at first. Now he can do 60. He does sets of 15 to 20, but still, he couldn't do that.
Yeah, but I think your approach was dead on, and some people don't like to employ this approach because it doesn't have that, like, glitz factor to it for the person approaching you. But anything that you've done, you're layering on challenges. When you want to do 10 challenges with somebody, like, not challenges as a challenge, but you want that person to make 10 choices for themselves. Right. You can't give them all 10 options at once. I'm going to start with the easiest one. Let's see how long it takes them. Exactly, right? So you probably did a great job of, like...
Or you'll stretch them out to where they're trying to do it all, and they physically, this is just not sustainable right now.
Exactly. And then they drop off, and then they try something else and never works. So it's like, that's where we go back to the beginning. It's like the slower you can implement some of these things and the slower you make changes, all of a sudden, this dude's doing 60 push-ups that couldn't do 5.
Also, if you really think your client's serious about weight loss or whatever their goals are, you have to implore to them, this is not happening overnight. Like, they have to have it in their head. They're going to be with you for 6 months, a year, 2 years, because that's really the time frame it takes to make these changes properly.
Yeah.
And that's if like it's 6 months to a year. That's if someone just like all of a sudden changes everything. Like a lot of these progressions take years upon years to get there. So think more. I mean, short term is important, but also think long term and like, how am I going to get this person to this point? And if you try to make them do too much short term, it can affect the long term.
100%.
So one of the things that he loves is cookies, and he still eats his cookies, but I don't think he eats as nearly as many cookies. I also think he feels more guilty if he eats more than he should. Like he's more conscious, and he's changed small things. Like one of the biggest things that we changed is he really is doing his best to drink as much water as possible throughout the day. Like he takes that really serious. Where I don't know if that was something he was doing before me.
Right.
And I think he's found, and he's more conscious. Like when he goes out to eat, he might get, he may not get the most unhealthy thing. He may get something that he doesn't like as much, but is like still very tasty, but healthier than the other option.
Right.
So it's those small changes, though.
Small changes. Yeah. It's like when you look at the psychology of it, it's like if you want to make one change and you want to be consistent with that, and it's on your own choice to do it, that might take like up to 3 months or longer to implement one small change. And you give that person 10 changes, it's just like setting them up for failure.
And I'd say he's in the maintaining phase now.
Mm-hmm.
So he's officially progressed from like the training phase to like this is part of his life now. I would say he's been doing it for so long that in his mind, this is what he does every week, and it's been great for him. So.
Yeah. You gave him the key to realize like he did it. Now he sees the benefit of it. Now it's an easy choice for him.
Well, now he's getting too strong.
Yeah,
he's gonna get to points catching up with me. I'm gonna look bad, so I gotta have to slow him down a little bit.
That's your job as a trainer.
Yeah, right. I had my objective is to graduate people from me.
100%.
Actually graduate. I think I told you, like, I'm all about teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So Transparency Fitness is 100% about, I mean, I've had one client graduate when he started with me. I mean, he was physically fit. He was an ex-college swimmer. However, he didn't really know much about programming and understanding, like, how to put things together so that he could get results. So he spent, I think, 6 or 8 months, no, maybe close to 10 months with me. And we went through 4 different programs, and I explained each program to him, taught him why I liked it, why we were doing it. So we went through a strength training phase. We went through an endurance phase. We went through a hypertrophy phase. We never did get to go through like ultra strength where you're doing sets of 3 and 4, which I've actually never done a 12-week phase of that because it just seems like you're going in for – you're still working out for an hour, but you're just doing really, really heavy weight.
Reps of like, 3 times, whatever.
And it just doesn't seem – but I do need to try it because I think it would be an interesting just try it. I don't have most people do any programs that I haven't at least tried for 12 weeks. Like if I have you go through a strength training program, I've already done that strength training program myself.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he went through all those programs, and then, I kept telling him, I was like, hey, you can keep paying me, but you don't need to. You're good to go. And now he's doing his own thing, and he's, he can build his own programs, and he knows exactly what to do.
That's the goal,
and he
right?
feels super confident.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is the goal because he's told people, like his mom is now, or, one of my clients because he did, he liked me so much that he's like, Mom, you need somebody. And so again, if you do good work, it'll pay forward.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's I love it.
But we're finishing up here,
Cool.
but we got a couple rapid fire questions.
Sure, let's do it.
So here we go. Online coaching or in person?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I would say for the individual living in the world now, online coaching is probably more convenient for that person.
Okay.
Because they can work out when and where they would need to work out. For me, it's like the time for me to get to the gym and back would be my workout time.
Right. And you could expand the business a lot more online than you can one-on-one.
Yeah, I mean,
but there is something to be said about.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would love to have my hands on people all day long, but it's just not going to work out for my position right now.
This would be a hard one, hard rapid fire question.
Who would be?
One-on-one or versus class? Do you like teaching a bunch of people, or do you get more out of just that one-on-one interaction?
I like both.
Yeah,
fair enough. That's a fair.
Fair enough.
Some people love group settings, some people don't.
So, chicken or beef?
I'm gonna be a chicken guy.
Yeah, chicken.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Coffee or pre-workout?
Coffee.
Yeah, 100%.
I
hate pre-workout.
There's so much filler crap in the pre-workouts
it makes me feel ill. I can't even work out after a pre-workout.
If you can't pronounce some of the names of the top ingredients, you probably shouldn't be eating it.
Well, the biggest thing that's in pre-workout that I've read is is it called amino acids or what is it? Beta-alanine.
Beta-alanine?
Yeah, beta-alanine. And so I just buy that pure, like, because I think that's what's supposed to give you those short-term strength gains. So I think, from my understanding, from what I did research, is by taking some of that, and it's small, but it may be an extra 1 or 2% that you may be able to push through by just taking that supposedly. So, but that's the ingredient in pre-workout that also makes you tingle like crazy. So it's not comfortable, but I do think it helps. So.
Yeah.
Barbell or dumbbell?
Ooh,
I know, right?
it's a tough one. I would say if I had,
Your arms say dumbbell to me.
I would say I don't.
They
do
look
a lot,
like
I don't
they've
do
been
many
shaped by
curls. I
dumbbells.
don't do many curls.
Really?
Yeah. I would say barbell just because you can do way more
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
If I had one or the other, I'd live or die with it.
Well, and at the end of the day, if you want to be a prideful male, it's like, what do you bench? What do you squat?
Yeah.
You know, so if you're not doing
What are you
that, you
deadlifting?
can't, yeah. Are you even doing anything? Do you even lift? You know, there are those guys out there.
There are
and
those
girls,
guys out there.
guys and gals
Yeah.
that are just like, do you even lift if you don't use a barbell?
Right.
Everyone does it differently, but yes.
I would say kettlebell. If I had to do one thing, it would be
Really?
kettlebells.
So I think Joe Rogan said that if he had like 3 things he could pick, the kettlebell was one of the things that
It
he
would
would
be.
have. Or it might have been, he might have picked 3 kettlebells.
Yeah.
It might have been just
I
three,
would probably
three
do that
different
too.
weights or something.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, for the people that really know kettlebells, and I've watched a lot of videos, I know a amount, but I don't know nearly the amount of things that people do. You can do an ungodly amount of stuff with a kettlebell.
A lot. Yeah, I just had on, this is probably outside of the scope of this podcast, but I just had on 4-time world record holder in kettlebell swings on my podcast. His name is Stephen Burkett.
I didn't even know there's a competition.
Sergeant Major Kettlebell, if you want to follow him on Instagram.
Is he here in Lexington?
No, he's out in California.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, did you do I guess, a
Just
Zoom
did a
or
Zoom,
something?
yeah. But super interesting guy. He's been a Marine for 27 years, but he's like one of the kettlebell masters of the swing, I would say. So if you're into kettlebells, he'd be a guy to look at.
I probably already watched videos.
You really have, but we're gonna write a book together on efficient swings and stuff like that. So I'm pretty pumped.
So
to do
we're
that.
going to be having you back on at the very
Yeah.
least, to talk about the book.
Talk about this could be like a year from now when this thing gets published, but that's one of our goals.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Any last words, any shout outs, anything you want to say? Of course, we'll pop up some social media stuff here, and we'll put some links below in the Facebook so that people can, or not Facebook, but YouTube, so that people can go follow you.
Cool.
But yeah, say what you want to say right here, right now.
I appreciate you for having me on, and it's been a fun hour and a half or so. And with that, hopefully just everybody that listens to this just, gets excited to do what they love and be active and fit. And that's really the goal.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, thanks.
Cool, man.
As always, guys, we'll catch you next time.